Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video. I read 5 books this past week and DNF'd one, so we've got my second DNF of the year. I'm pretty happy with how much I got read because it was a slower reading week for me due to a couple of different factors. The Australian Open is on. It's been the first week of the Australian Open, which is one of the major tennis competitions, in case you didn't know. And I love the Australian Open. It's one of my favorite times of year. So I've been watching quite a bit of that, which has been eating into my reading time. I was also out to lunch 3 different days this week, which means I didn't read any of those 3 days. And then also on top of that, I wasn't really reading on the bus that much this week. I just kept things. It was like by the time I finished like looking at stuff on my phone, which I always do kind of when I first get on the bus, we were like more than halfway to work. So then I was just like, oh, it's not really worth it to pull out my book now. And so I wasn't really reading on my commute either. So to not have commute reading, not very much lunchtime reading, and to have the Australian Open going on and to have still finished 5 books, I'm pretty happy with. So let's just jump straight in and talk about the 5 things that I did manage to complete. So the very first book that I completed over this past week was Poison Princess by Kresley Cole. So this is a YA, I don't even know what genre you would call this, kind of paranormal, post-apocalyptic, I guess you would say. At the start of the book, we're following 16-year-old Evie. She is having kind of visions of a very dark future, basically of the apocalypse, and has actually just at the start of the book gotten out of a like mental health facility that her mum kind of put her into for the summer, because of these visions or delusions or whatever. And so she's been seeing these things. Lo and behold, the apocalypse happens, and the majority of this book is set kind of post-apocalyptic, so it's got quite a lot of survival themes, but the main thing that kind of ties into it is that it does deal with the tarot. There are people, like teenagers, I guess, 22 of them, I think. There's a teenager that embodies each of the major arcana, however you say it, of the tarot, and it's about what happens with that. You don't really find out exactly kind of what all of that means until later on in the book, so I don't really want to say because I guess it's kind of spoilery. Mixed feelings on this. I think the premise is really like quite original. It's not the type of premise like with the arcana and tarot and all of that I've really heard before, so I liked that. The romance is incredibly problematic. The main guy is not just like a broody bad boy type. I mean, he is, but it's not even just that. Like, he is straight up an asshole. He does really awful things, and like to her, like treats her really awfully, and a lot of it in the name of you know, I guess kind of that he likes her, but he doesn't know she likes him, and so I'm going to treat you awfully, and it was a lot. So I had a lot of problems with that. But overall, like, it was enjoyable. I ended up giving this 3.25 stars. So I read that. I then read Dangerous Desires by Dawn Altieri. This is a digital copy that I had received in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. This one is published on the 27th of January, which is, what, Monday? So you can get your hands on a copy then if you are interested in this book. So this is a romantic suspense. So this is a romance book that I requested from NetGalley because I've mentioned that I'm trying to read more romance this year, and one of the ways that I'm trying to do that is to keep my eye out for romance books that kind of take my fancy on NetGalley and requesting those, and this is one that I was approved for. So it is romantic suspense. So it's kind of a like cliche romance plot in that we're following a character who had a fiance who was killed in a hit-and-run accident, and the police detective who investigated the hit and run, which was never solved, always kind of had a thing for her and has thought of her ever since. And it's about 3 years post that happening, and now there is kind of the main female character is attacked on the street, I mean, at first they just think it's an attempted robbery, but then a string of women starts to turn up dead who have a striking resemblance to the main character. And of course, the investigating police officer is the guy who investigated the hit and run on her fiance all those years ago. And it's obviously a romance between the two of them. This was fairly enjoyable. Like, it was pretty stock standard romantic suspense, like not that different from most romantic suspense books that I have read in the past. I will say that one thing I didn't like about it is that this just does have the thing where when usually the main female character has had a previous serious relationship, either she was married before, like she's widowed, or divorced even, or had a fiance in this case that died. I don't like when authors find it necessary to kind of turn that on its head and make it but that romance was not this romance, and it turns out I was never really in love with him. Through like it's done in different ways, but like that's the main thing of it, is because as if there can only be one true love of your life, which some people believe, and that's fine, but I don't like when they feel like they have to kind of, not villainize, it's not really villainize, but they have to like cheapen the original romance in order to make it seem like this romance that's happening in this book is like, you know, this great fated love story type of thing, which I don't love, because I don't think that it sends a great message that you can't have had and even if it wasn't that the person died, if you've just had a relationship that was a really serious, important relationship in your life that ended through whatever circumstances, you've just broken up, and then you're now in a new relationship, that it has to be that, oh, that relationship, I never even really loved that person. Like, I just don't love when authors do that. Yeah. I also thought that the overall, like, outcome of the plot, of this suspense plot was, like, fairly predictable, which is fine. It's not the type of, like, it's mainly aimed at the romance, so I don't need it to be overly shocking. There were also a few little details that I didn't find overly believable, but for the main part, like, it was enjoyable. Like, I enjoyed my time reading it, and I ended up giving that 3.25 stars as well. I then listened on audio to House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. So this was quite a popular 2019 release, towards the end part of 2019. This is YA fantasy, I guess you would call it. It's a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale, which is a fairy tale I'm vaguely familiar with, as I have previously read a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, so I'm only kind of familiar with the story through that. And this follows a character named Anna Lee, who is one of 12 sisters, but at the start of the story, 4 of her sisters have already died through, like, at different times, through different circumstances. And they live on an island, like, it's like a fantasy setting, like, on this island, and they're people who kind of worship the ocean and, like, the ocean gods and salt, the salt of the ocean and all that type of thing. And 4 of the sisters have died. The people of the island believe that this family is cursed because the daughters are dying off, and Anna Lee starts to suspect that the most recent death of her sister, which they believe was suicide, that she threw herself off a cliff, was maybe not suicide, and that she was maybe murdered, and, like, maybe someone's murdering the sisters and they're not just dying through, like, not natural causes, but through whatever circumstances. I enjoyed this. I loved the vibe. This has a very kind of, like, creepy, ominous vibe. Like, it's not scary or anything, but, like, that creepy, ominous type of vibe, which I love. I loved the setting. I love books set on islands. Usually, like, in some kind of, like, thriller. Like, this isn't a thriller, it's more fantasy, but it's like a creepy mystery-ish type of fantasy. And I love, like I say, thrillers or mysteries and that kind of creepy vibe, like, when it's set on an island. I guess it's kind of to do with that more, like, closed in, locked in type of feeling that I really enjoy. So loved the setting. I will say at the beginning, especially, like, through the first half, I did struggle to keep the sisters straight, because there are the 7 sisters that are still remaining, and then the 4 that have died, and there's references to them throughout, and so a lot of different sisters all being mentioned at different times, and I was like, wait, which one are you again, for a little bit. But after a while, you just start to kind of remember the main players, if you will, like the ones who are kind of more in the story, and like it was fine. I will also say that, and it's hard for me to kind of talk about one of the problems that I had without spoiling things, is that the author did something in the story that I thought was a pretty ballsy move, and I love when authors are like willing to go there, and she did, but then she kind of backtracked on what she'd done. And so I was like, first I was like, yes, props to you, Erin A. Craig, for like being willing to go there. And then like later on I was like, oh, well, I guess not, but you tried. So, but I did really enjoy it. I should say this was narrated on audio by Emily Lawrence. Like I said, overall, I really did enjoy that story, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. Then we come to my DNF. So then I DNF'd another audiobook, which was the audiobook for Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. So this is a YA sci-fi. I can't really tell you what the plot is because I'm not really sure what the plot is. The main reason I DNF'd this book, and I was talking about this with Mel during the week, that I've been DNFing a lot more recently, you may have noticed, across like the course of like kind of the last 6 months on my channel. And it's partly to do with the fact, I think, that since I've started my new job in October, I'm not getting through as much audiobooks as I used to, which is fine, but because of that, I'm conscious that I'm not getting through as many. And I don't need to, but it's just kind of there in the back of my mind. So when I'm not immediately engaged in an audiobook, I become very impatient with it because I'm starting to think, well, I don't know if I'm going to like this, and I don't want to waste my time when I'm not getting through as many books on one that I'm not going to like. So I started to kind of panic a little bit. And like, again, with this is one where I started to think, oh, maybe I don't know if I want to keep going with this. And then I was like, no, keep trying. And then I listened to like another 10 or 15% from when I first thought about DNFing it, and then was like, no, I'm not enjoying this. So this is another one. So when I very first started DNFing books, because prior to BookTube, I had DNF'd like 2 books in my entire life. I was not a DNFer, and I've been a big reader for my whole life, and I had DNF'd probably 2 books ever. So to DNF back then, like when I first started DNFing a bit more regularly, like the early-ish days of my channel, I was so seriously hating those books that I was never like coming back to them. A lot of the books that I've DNF'd lately, well, not all of them, but some of them are ones that they're not necessarily DNFs forever. They are books that maybe in a different mood, on a different day, or in a different format, I might come across and go, you know what, I'm going to give this another go. Like if there was a challenge in a readathon, for example, of like pick up a book that you've previously DNF'd, I have options for that now, because there are books that I've DNF'd in the last like year or so that I would be willing to give another go. And this is one of them. So it's YA sci-fi. I'm trying to think if I can even really tell you what it's about. It's basically about, I think, they're in space and there's problems with Earth, but I wasn't really clear on what the problems with Earth were. And they're on a planet that is going to, basically there's people who are in space trying to find different areas that like humans could possibly inhabit. And one of the female character is like a scavenger who goes down onto these places and tries to like scavenge stuff to sell because she's trying to raise money, I think, to get her sister back, but I wasn't really clear on what happened to her sister. And then the main male character's dad is like a disgraced scholar, and he's there to try get evidence of something or find out something to like clear his dad's name or something. Clearly I wasn't that like in the story because I'm really not clear on what it's about. So I just wasn't invested. I wasn't really sure what was going on. And then on top of that, the romance was so incredibly like, I could tell we were heading down a real insta-love path. And not only were we headed down a real insta-love path, it was incredibly cheesy. Like the romance was just really cheesy. Like anytime there was any kind of like romantic-y, flirty part of the story, I was just like, I was cringing at my desk at work while I was listening. So I just decided to put that one to the side for now. So I DNF'd that one. The next book that I did finish though was Endless Night by Kresley Cole. This is the second book in the series. This is a 5-book series at the moment. There is, I think, a 6th book coming out sometime this year. And I'm not clear on whether the series was finished and there's like a tack on, or if the series has been ongoing and was always going to be like 6 books. I'm not really sure. But I did own this second book, so I picked this one up. This I can't really talk too much about. Obviously, it is the continuation. I will say that this book introduces a second love interest, which is equally, if not more problematic than the first romance. And I'm like one of those situations where I'm like, I don't even know who I want the main character to end up with, because like they're both really not great. It's just one of those situations where I'm kind of like, I think you'd just be better off maybe on your own, but I don't think that's going to happen in a YA series. Also, I will say that I enjoyed this probably more than I had enjoyed the first book, but the middle of this one I will say did drag. Like there's quite a slow part of the middle of this. So I ended up giving this the same rating which I gave the first book, which was 3.25 stars. And then I think we're on to the final book. Yes, the final book that I read this past week was another audiobook, and it was Paperboy by Vince Vaughter, which is narrated by Lincoln Hope. This is a middle grade. It's kind of, I think, would border middle grade and YA, like younger YA readers to like middle grade type of age range. It's a historical story about a boy who is set in, I think it's 59, like the late 50s, early 60s type of time period. It's still set during segregation, because one of the things that's happening in the book is that he does have a black, the family has a black maid, like a maid who is also kind of like, they call it a maid because she does like the cooking and the cleaning and all that, but she also like raises the main character. Like he loves the family's maid, like it's like his favorite person like on the planet, if you know what I mean. The main kind of thing that this book is dealing with is that the main character has quite a bad stutter, and this is on voices for the stutter representation, and there is a author's note like at the end from the author, which the author actually narrated himself, which was great, talking about like kind of a bit of his experience with this and all of that, which I really appreciated. And I really enjoyed this book. It was like a really like heartwarming, nice story. I liked the characters and I liked the relationship. I guess I should say the main kind of plot is that his friend, the main character's friend, has gone away for part of the summer, and he is taking over his friend's paper route while his friend is away. And he's a bit like nervous about it because part of the job is not just like throwing the papers, it's going up and collecting the money for the newspapers. And he's scared about having to knock on people's doors if they haven't left the money out where it's supposed to be, and like ask them for money, because he's scared of having to speak to people, particularly like strangers who don't know about his stutter and, you know, all of that situation. I thought the representation, like I said, was really great. It was a really heartwarming story. Liked the characters, liked the plot, liked everything that was happening in there. I just thought it was like a really enjoyable, like heartwarming type of story that I just really enjoyed. And I don't have too much to say about it apart from that, but I gave it 4 stars. So that's it. In terms of my current read, which I'm just realizing that once again, 2 weeks in a row, I forgot to bring my current read in. But I am currently reading Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson, which is a thriller. And I'm not going to go too much into the plot in this video because I'll wait and talk about it more in detail in next week's recent reads. But I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about 100 pages into it so far, and I'm hoping to finish it this weekend. So that's it. That is it for this video. So I would love to chat in the comments down below. If you've read any of these books, if you guys have any thoughts on them, or what you guys have been reading recently, what have you been loving, what have you been hating, I would love to chat. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys!